In this exercise, we're going to discuss a few specialty type items, specifically ligatures, swashes, ordinals, and fractions, in the context of the OpenType panel. I've saved my progress as perspectivetype.ai, and I'm going to go ahead and select that yellow type that we went ahead and formatted in the previous exercise. Notice that it's not at the angle that it appears to be, so bear that in mind. And then, having done that, notice that we've got this big problem over here in the word difficulty. So we have a big gap between the F and the I. And that is the automatic kerning that's associated with this font right now. So I can't figure out why it's this bad, but what needs to happen is those letters need to be replaced with a ligature. A ligature is a single character that represents multiple letters. For example, there's a ligature for FI in a row. There's a ligature for FL. There's another ligature in this font for FFI and several other combinations as well. Now, assuming that you're using an OpenType font as opposed to either a TrueType font or a PostScript Type 1 font or something along those lines, OpenType's been out there for years, about a decade now, and just about every font that ships anymore is an OpenType font. All of the fonts that ship along with the Creative Suite are OpenType fonts. And OpenType fonts are smarter than the old generation. First of all, by the way, they're cross-platform. So the same font file can be used on the Mac or the PC. But also, they're indexed in a way that Illustrator can read. And that way, Illustrator can automatically replace characters with the preferred characters. For example, anytime you type FFI, it should automatically get replaced with a ligature. And let me show you how that works. To get to the OpenType panel, you go up to the window menu, you drop all the way down to the type command, which brings up a submenu, and then you choose OpenType or you press Mash your fist T. So Control-Shift-Alt-T or Command-Shift-Option-T on the Mac brings up the OpenType panel over here. And then at this point, you can use the options inside of this panel to automatically replace characters. Now, these first two options, the pop-up menus, they're not nearly as popular as the others. Figure allows you to replace numbers. That's what the figure item means. You're replacing numbers with other kinds of numbers. So you can use tabular lining. That means that a 1 gets just as much space as a 2 and a 3 and so on. Or you can use proportional lining. We'll see that in a moment. You can also choose old-style characters if they're available. And old-style characters, old-style numbers drop below the baseline in many cases. You also have these position options here, which are great for superscripts and subscripts, as well as numerators and denominators. This would be numbers inside of a fraction. So the first number in the fraction is the numerator. The second number is the denominator. So you can take advantage of those options as well. These icons down here at the bottom, though, are a little more popular. Notice right there is standard ligatures, and it says FI. And as soon as I click on that, watch what happens to the FFI down here. It automatically heals and becomes a good-looking character. And the reason I say that's a single character is notice that the dot of the I is actually built into that F right there. So it's all one single continuous character. That's not something you could do with multiple characters in a row. However, Illustrator can spell check that as FFI. It's quite intelligent about the way it handles it. You also have the option of using discretionary ligatures. Now, these are not very popular, quite frankly. They're old-style ligatures, not the kind of thing that we see on a regular basis. I think they're a little overly fancy, but watch what happens. If I turn this on, watch what happens to the ST in persistent and the ST in master. They get a little loop on top of them. So you may want that, you may not, totally up to you. If you're working with an italic style, and in my case, I'm working with Adobe Caslon Pro Bold Italic, then the font may include special swash characters. So if I turn on the swash item, watch what happens to the capital letters in this text right there. The M gets a big swash next to it, the P gets a swash, the D gets a swash, and so on. And so that ends up filling out things quite nicely, I think. Now then, let's take a look at some of the other options here. We're not going to see every single one of them, just the most common ones. I'm going to click on this text up here and notice that it says the first name, and that one ST, the ST should be raised, and that's called an ordinal, by the way. When the S and the T are raised characters, they're basically superscripted characters, and many OpenType fonts include specialty ordinals, and if you want to automatically apply them, then you go ahead and turn on ordinals. Problem is, in our case, Illustrator gets a little carried away and thinks just about everything inside this point text must be an ordinal. And of course, it's wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac to undo that. I'll grab my Type tool, and I'll just select first, like so, and then I'll go ahead and turn on the ordinals option, and that'll automatically switch out that text. Notice also I've got a fraction right here, 1, and then a slash character, and then 2. Well, I could replace that with the fraction character by selecting that text, because if I don't select those characters right there, then it's going to replace the 1 over here as well. So I need to make sure I just get the fraction, and I'll go ahead and click on that fractions icon. And I end up automatically replacing that fraction with a single character. Now, you may look at this built fraction at this point. This is a single fraction character, bear that in mind. You may look at it and think, gosh, those numbers need to be kerned apart from each other. Well, you're not going to be able to do that because you can't kern pieces of a single character away from each other. They're glued into alignment just like that, so just bear that in mind. The S and the T, however, by the way, and the 1 are all separate characters. So that's how you work with these specialty characters. Remember, you got your ligatures, you got swashes, you have ordinals, which are the superscripted letters, and you've got fractions as well, all of which you can replace automatically inside of OpenType fonts from the OpenType panel.